Alrighty, y'all. Welcome back to the channel. So today we're just going to talk about things to look for when you're buying a handle. This can be for a sledgehammer, maul, axe, anything of that sort. And so one thing we're going to start right off with is what's called a runout. So obviously, wood has grain and it's like lines. You want to make sure that they're all going straight and not off at an angle like that. Because if it's going right from the end of the handle all the way into the head, then it's, pretty strong. If you have a bunch of, sideways sections like that, then kind of think of it as laminated and wanting to peel apart. So you want it to be as straight as possible. Obviously, if it's, 1 degree off, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't have to be perfect. But if you see anything extreme, that's obviously pretty bad. And then another thing is what's called grain orientation. So if we can get this to work here. There we go. So you can see the lines in there. Now, there's two things that you want to look for. One is you want to make sure that it's parallel with the head. So if the head, let's say it's an axe and the bit is pointing that way, you want the grain to point that way as well. Because if it's sideways, once again, think of it as being laminated. It'll want to pry apart. And I've seen it happen. So do not get them sideways. And you really got to be careful because when you're buying hardware store stuff, I've seen them where it's sideways or pretty close. So you want to avoid that. And once again, like if it's, this one's slightly sideways because you can see the curvature of the tree, that's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it can't be extremely bad or anything like that. And another thing is the tightness of the grain. Now you can see just how tight this is. The grain on this is so much tighter than on that hardware store handle. Now you can't really find this anymore because this was most likely older growth trees. All these newer handles are new growth. So the trees grow up pretty quickly. They shoot right up and the, growth rings aren't too close. So it's not as strong, but once again, as long as you make sure grain orientation is straight and you don't have any terrible run out or anything, it should be pretty good. I mean, obviously it's not going to be as strong. If we look at this axe here, you can see I've got some chips taken out of the handle from over strikes, dents, just from trying to split wood with it, like pieces of pine. And of course, once you hit it a few number of times, you almost get like fingers where you've hit it in the same area. That'll chew that handle out. And this has survived, still going on pretty good. So grain tightness is one thing that's nice, but you don't have as much of a choice in that anymore. Just so look for grain orientation as well as run out. And then the last thing is handle quality in terms of shape. Now, this one is kind of subjective. It's one of those things. Once you've had a good handle, you don't ever want to go back to a bad one. And especially, I've seen the boys' axe handles or even regular axe handles. This is a sledge eye maul, so it's basically straight. And so I'm not as picky with those. But the boys' axe handles, regular curved axe handles, pretty much all of them that I see are absolutely atrocious. They're almost more like sledge handles. I mean, yes, they have a sort of resemblance in that they have maybe a very minor curve, almost something like a fawn's foot, but it's absolutely terrible. Here's a snow annealy axe. These are made in the USA, and this isn't too bad. I think this was 66 bucks. I'm sure on Amazon you'll pay more, but you can see there that they actually have a proper palm swell. It tapers upward, and the handle's not terribly thick either. It's got a nice palm swell on it. Overall, the handle was just pretty well thought out. That's a nice handle. And I'm sure somebody who makes their own handles would scoff at that. No doubt, if you're making your own, you can make something really high quality. But it's infinitely better than these hardware store handles. So, it's kind of up to you and how much that matters to you. But of course, you can always, take a wood rasp to it and file it down. But of course, a lot of that depends on, what it's being used for. Something like a splitting maul, you're used to thicker handles, so it doesn't need to be thin. And if it is thinner, it's going to be weaker. Whereas something like a felling axe, you can thin down more, especially if you're skilled and you're not going to overstrike. You could probably go thinner. And once again, if you had some really tight grain, you could probably go even thinner. So those are the main things. And then, yeah, another thing is all these hardware store axes, pretty much every new axe, unless you get something like a Grand Force or something very high end, has this like lacquer type stuff on it, varnish. That's the word I was looking for. And it's kind of terrible in that if you have gloves, it feels like the maul is going to slip out of your hand. And if you don't wear gloves, it kind of feels slippery, but at the same time, like it kind of catches your skin and will cause blisters. It's just terrible. I just take like a razor blade, go almost at 90. Don't go like this because then you're peeling up the wood. I go a 90 and then slightly less. I can peel it off pretty good that way. You could also sand it, but that's just what I like to do because it's one of those things you may get used to it, but then once you go to a good boiled linseed oil handle, you'll not want to go back. So yeah, those are a few basic things to look for when you're buying an axe handle or maul, sledge. They're all kind of the same. And obviously, if you're buying a little 1-pound hatchet with a 14-inch handle, it's not going to matter quite as much as like an 8-pound maul with a 36-inch handle or something like that. But it's good to look for. So thank you guys for watching this video. Feel free to check out some of my other videos. God bless, and see you on the next one.